as normal. All right. So I want to welcome you all to this meeting, especially under the circumstances of the wet weather. I want to remind all of our members who might be on Zoom that they should mute their mics, and they can always share questions with us via the chat. So today we're going to begin the meeting with an invocation. Lee Davis, would you please come forward and offer a prayer as we start our luncheon meeting? Thank you, Lee.
Thank you very much, President Tim. If we could please bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for all the folks gathered here today. We also thank you, Lord, for our new Rotary leadership
from Malaysia via the Northjax Club. He's on, what is an assignment for 3 years?
3 years.
This was the only time I could meet Matthew as far as in his temporary visit here to Jacksonville for a few days. This is a Paul Harris +5. I've had it in the glove compartment in my car for about 2 months now. Finally caught up with Matthew. Matthew, thank you, and we'll pin this on here. Yep. You know, a +5 equals about $6,000 in contributions over to polio. So Matthew is at the top and the lead of the class here. But we're geography, we have changed the mix also. Our Northjax-Rotarians used to meet at the zoo. We are now up at the airport. We're out on one of the runways there over at a private jet port at the Shelter building, and we're loving it. And we have about 25 members, but we have a Interact Club. And also I was telling the major before, we also have the Junior ROTC. So we have almost 200 young students, 16, 17, 18-year-old, a combination of cadets, interactors, and the National Honor Society who are doing a lot of projects. And we have to put nets over them, holding them back as far as on their enthusiasm and a little different motivation than a normal Rotarian. These young men and women are looking for signatures as far as on community service, and we're able to provide that. And we have so many projects. Matthew has been the king of projects. He sent me a book a couple of years ago about to give to my wife for me just to say no. We have so many projects we don't say no to, and we're in the middle of them right now. And thank you for your contributions, as well as then working with us over with the community health outreach. Matthew.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome back.
Thank you. One more minute. Okay, one more second. So Pat mentioned community health outreach, and this club has been a huge supporter of community health outreach for a long time with the building campaign, the Apple Project we did in 2015. Mike, your fellow member, Mike Prendergrass, unfortunately wasn't able to be here today, but is a fellow board member of community health outreach. We have some flyers on the table on an upcoming social coming up in October 10th. That will be at the Haskell building. There's a social, there's a sponsor packet, and then a ticket packet. Please, if you're interested, grab one of those. Thank you.
I want to get that, but come on, I don't want to soft sell this thing. So what is it a good social? Or
It is a
bad
great,
social?
no, it is an awesome social.
What's happening at the social? What's happening?
There's a silent auction, there's wonderful food, and just great social
Good people.
opportunity. Good people too.
All
So
right. And it's
be
going to
a
be at
lot
the
of-
Haskell building?
At the Haskell
Right
building.
there on the water?
Right there on the water.
All right.
Yep. So October 10th.
All right.
So
We'll remember that.
Last year raised what, $237,000. So this is Matthew kicks a lot of doors, knocks doors. He doesn't take no for an answer. So he's doing a lot of great stuff, and has been doing this. What we started with Mrs. Weaver and Jeannie Blaylock back in 2012. So this is not an overnight success. We've been working on this project for 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
President
All right.
Tim,
Let's
thank
get a
you so
picture.
much.
All right.
Hold on. Our Sergeant at Arms is going to get a photo. Let's move over here so we can get all of us. All right. Good. Hey, one more. Let's hold that pin up. All right. Thank you, guys. All right, outstanding. Let's remember that event on October 10th. Family of Rotary, Carl Dawson is here. I know I saw, hey, Carl. All right, come on up here and tell us whose birthday it is today. Thank you, buddy.
I tell you, you're the most organized man I've ever met.
I'm a professional. You know that, don't you?
You are a
I run a
professional.
pension fund.
Yes.
Those checks got to clear every 2 weeks, so I try to be organized.
We have 2 birthdays this week. Today is Michael Corrigan Jr.'s birthday. He's 38 years old. And September 18th will be Mike Crumpler's birthday. He'll be 39.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to announce that Ed Lombard has been elected to the board of the Florida Theater. And Jimmy Kelly has a pop-up. Well, it said it was his birthday today. So thank you. Thank you. I got a little story for you. You're playing for the Rotary Golf Championship. After 17 holes, you and your opponent are dead even. You tee off on the 18th tee. Your ball goes dead straight for 250 yards. Your opponent hits his ball right into the woods. You help him look for the ball for 10 minutes. Finally, he says, go ahead and hit your second shot, and I'll look for mine for a few more minutes. If I don't find it, I will go back to the tee and hit my tee shot again. You hit your second shot, and it lands 10 feet from the hole. Just as your ball hits the green, from out of the woods, you hear, found it. The ball comes flying out of the woods and lands this far from the hole. Now, considering the four-way test, here is your dilemma. Do you take the cheating SOB's ball out of your pocket and confront him with it, or do you keep your mouth shut? Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thanks, Carl. Rotarians know there's no four-way test in golf. It just doesn't apply. All right. Our Sergeant at Arms, Joe Springer, you're going to introduce visiting Rotarians and other guests.
Thank you, President Tim. You've already met Matthew and Pat with the Rotary PED. We appreciate that. Major, you've got a guest, and I'm sorry I didn't get his name. Dustin Sanger is visiting with us from the Public Affairs Office. Is that correct? Thank you so much. And then also we have a guest from the Downtown Club, Bill Sorensen, and I didn't see where he went. Bill, thank you so much for visiting. Did anyone else slip in that I didn't see? Then I'm going to tell no jokes and sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Our speaker introduction today is going to be performed by President-elect Raul Sharma. Raul, yes. Lee, you want me to remind everybody, or do you want me to pull the ticket? All right, guys. First of all, Ed, did you buy any tickets today? Okay. You want to just take the prize now? And I'm sorry I missed that. Mr. Corrigan won the football pool, and congratulations. I've got what, 5 tickets? Does anybody else need to buy any tickets before this is for the 50-50, the Queen of Hearts. Yes, right. Okay. There are no cards here. Cards would be good. They can hear that.
I'm going to be Lee Davis's assistant, President Sam. The ticket number that I now selected is number 068572.
Yes, I got it right here. I love it. I cannot wait to win this $80.
Well, wait, that's only 50% of that.
$40.
$40, yes.
What's the game here?
We got to find the Queen of Hearts, and she was in there, and I shuffled it. Okay.
All right, here we I didn't win. I didn't think I was going to win. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. All right, Raul, you ready to go to work? You going to introduce the major for us?
President Tim, before I do that, a reminder about the Bloodmobile. If you could share that.
You know, that's right. And I am sorry. I should have been out there earlier today. I had a couple of things I had to wrap up before I came over to the club. And so I didn't get a chance to do it. And I'm going to do everything in my power to give blood before I leave here today. Anybody else who didn't get their opportunity, please step outside. I saw the Bloodmobile when I walked in. It doesn't take long. Please give blood. All right, Raul, let's introduce the major.
Thank you, President Tim. I promised myself that I didn't want to steal the spotlight today, but of course, you know, the lovely Lee Davis asked me to be an assistant during the game show segment of the ticket drawing, and I broke that promise. I know Mike O'Brien is not here today, but I would be remiss if I did not begin to at least acknowledge the part that he played in helping identify today's speaker. Myself, Mike O'Brien, and Ike Sherlock worked in conjunction with being very thoughtful about today. You heard the reference to September 11th, and I think it's really important for Rotary as an organization to continue to reinforce the principles of service above self, which is shared with our partners in the military. Major Marshall Hand is with us today from the United States Marine Corps. His position as headquarters company commander of the Blunt Island Command. Major Hand was raised in Mahopac, New York, and so he's going to share with us a reflection about September 11th, which hits really close to home to him. And I think will also take on special meaning for us as a Rotary audience today. But his military journey, starting in New York, taking him overseas to Iraq, Bulgaria, Europe, of course, continuing his education back in the United States. But something that Major Hand has always kept in front of him is a commitment to service. Major, we're very thankful to have you here today as I share this introduction with our Rotary Club. Graduating from the State University of New York, Albany in 2006 with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, commissioned as a second lieutenant. It was in November of 2006, Major Hand graduated from the basic school and was assigned as a tank officer. Upon graduating from the Armor Officers Basic Course in October of 2007, he was assigned 1st Tank Battalion, 1st Marine Division. In November of 2007, Second Lieutenant Hand reported to 1st Tank Battalion, 1st Marine Division in California, where he was assumed duties as the Company B 3rd Platoon Commander. In May of 2008, he was promoted to 1st Lieutenant. In the fall of 2008, deployed to the Sinjar province in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Returning in June 2009, he assumed duties as company support of operation as an Company B executive officer. In April 2010, served as the Battalion Assistant Operations Officer and Non-Lethal Weapons Officer in Charge, OIC, deployed for the first ever Black Sea rotational force. A military career that spans more than 15 years. In 2010, deployed and in Bulgaria was promoted to the rank of captain. Upon returning in August of 2010, he was reassigned to Kings Bay Naval Submarine Base in St. Mary's, Georgia, where he was assigned as the Company A 2nd Platoon Commander, Marine Corps Security Force Battalion. During his time with the Marine Corps Security Force Battalion, Lieutenant Hand served as the Company A Executive Officer and Company Commander until he was reassigned 2nd Marine Division in 2013. He reported to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina as the Battalion Assistant Officer, where he served for 4 years. and deployed as part of the Marine Corps Training Mission United Arab Emirates and served as the OIC for the 1st Mechanized Infantry Brigade. Once returning from the United Arab Emirates, Captain Hand left active duty and transitioned to the Marine Corps Reserve. He received a master's in leadership from no other place, but it's fitting, from Marshall University. Then in January 2017, he was promoted to major, joining Recruiting Station Pittsburgh as the recruiting support officer as part of the individual mobilization program. While serving there, he completed the Command and Staff College in May of 2021. He has received active duty orders to Blunt Island Command and has assumed his current duties as the headquarters company commander. Military decorations that include Navy, Marine Corps Commendation Medal, and the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, Gold Star, in lieu of his second award. He is married to Dr. Lauren Hand, and they have 3 children. On this day that Rotary Club of West Jacksonville honors Patriot Day and the reflection on September 11th, I ask my brothers and sisters in Rotary to please join me in welcoming Major Marshall Hand.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I get going and have a little brief here to have an overview as to what the Marine Corps is doing up at Blunt Island Command, I wanted to take this time to share a little bit about my story and background. As Raul mentioned, coming from New York, September 11th does hold a little special background to me. So it's truly a privilege to be here among such a dedicated group of community leaders and volunteers, people who devote their time and energy to making our city and community a better place. Your commitment to service is admirable and deeply appreciated, and it's an honor to share my story with you. So as he mentioned, we're here today on September 11th. It's the 23rd anniversary of one of the most somber and defining moments in our nation's history. And we all have defining moments in our lives, moments that challenge us and shape the people that we become. So on September 11th, 2001, I was a senior in high school in Mahopac, New York, about 45 minutes north of Manhattan. I was preoccupied with thoughts of college, friends, sports, what I would be doing with the rest of my life. Cell phones were not around yet. Internet was in its infancy, and we did not have immediate access to news and information like we do today. I was in gym class outside playing football when the attacks occurred. And it wasn't until about 10 minutes later when we went back inside where we heard rumblings going through the school as to what had happened. Shortly thereafter, the school was locked down and no one was permitted to enter or leave. And it stayed that way for a few hours until we could get some more information. Many classmates had parents or siblings that commuted into New York City daily. My oldest brother had just started working in Manhattan for Nick at Night and TV Land, so many did not know the status of their loved ones, myself included. Eventually, they released us from school, but only if you were signed out by a parent. But like any good high school senior, we all snuck out. They didn't know where we went, and we all found our way back to other people's houses to get together and find out what information we could. So going home and watching the events of the day unfold, we all knew that things would be different from that day on, but we just didn't know exactly how. The only thing we knew was that soon our country would be at war, and what that would entail, we still did not know. After my parents had gotten in touch with my brother and we knew he was okay, there was a sigh of relief. However, many classmates, especially those who had family that worked for the NYPD or FDNY, it would be a few days before they would find out and get news of their parents' welfare. And luckily, despite some injuries and long-term effects, no one's loved ones that I knew died that day. Seeing smoke rising in the distance for the following days of uncertainty only added to the stress of the situation as many tried to go about their lives in an attempt to return to normalcy despite all of that uncertainty. The images of the first responders running towards danger, risking their lives to save others, had a lasting impact on me. Seeing firefighters, police officers, and everyday citizens rushing to help in the face of unimaginable devastation planted a seed in my heart their bravery, their selflessness. It was a reminder of the best in humanity. In the days and weeks following September 11th, our nation came together in a way that was remarkable. People from all walks of life found common ground in their grief, their shock, and their determination to rebuild. Flags waved from every porch, people lined up to donate blood, which is fitting as we have the blood truck out here today. And there was an overwhelming sense that despite the horror of the attacks, we would endure. As a country, we stood united, a feeling that we had hoped would last forever. However, we quickly learned that it would not, as politics and other factors began to drive a wedge between us that unfortunately still exists to this day. Not knowing what would come next and being a senior at the time, we were in the midst of making plans for our future. Myself and another friend began looking at options for enlisting in the military. Ultimately, after weighing all my options and some long talks with my parents, I decided to attend college and go the route of attending officer candidate school to become an officer in the Marine Corps. And it was the best decision I ever made. Turns out, parents most of the time know what they're talking about, and you should listen to them, which is something I'm trying to instill upon my 3 young children to this day. Despite my best efforts, they do not listen. As I watched the events of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 and Enduring Freedom unfold on TV from college in Albany, New York, I couldn't help but wonder if I had made the right decision to forego enlisting out of high school. However, I knew that my day would come, and after graduating in 2006, I became a tank officer in charge of a platoon of M1A1 Abrams and 16 Marines. Shortly after joining 1st Tank Battalion in 29 Palms, California, I deployed to Iraq and built some of the strongest memories of my life as my Marines and I lived on our tanks in the desert sands of Iraq for about 8 months. One of the biggest lessons I learned in the Marines was that unity and common ground I mentioned earlier, the importance of teamwork and unity. No matter where you come from, no matter your background, once you put on that uniform, you're a part of a brotherhood. You rely on your fellow Marines and they rely on you. It was a humbling and empowering experience, and it reinforced the idea that service is about putting the needs of others above your own. After leaving active duty in 2015 to start a family and support my wife as she finished her training to become a gynecological oncologist, I spent time in the reserves, supporting our warfighters on active duty, but was never fully satisfied. Then last year, the opportunity to accept active duty orders became available, and I jumped at that opportunity to join Blunt Island Command as the company commander. Upon returning back to the ranks of active duty Marines, I realized despite everything that had stayed the same in the Marine Corps, a lot has also changed. Recently, I asked a Marine who works side by side with Dustin where he was on September 11th, and his answer was, I wasn't born yet. And while that response shocked me, it really shouldn't have. I, like many of you, feel as if that moment in time was not that long ago. But here we are 23 years later, and a whole generation of service members have joined, served, and honorably discharged, who only know about the events of that day from what they have been taught in school or seen and read on the internet. Right now, there's not a defining moment or spark that is causing the young men and women to join the military. Yet many still are, and we should appreciate that. This generation is serving because they want to. They feel the need to do something with their life that is bigger than themselves, and we need them to carry the torch until another life-altering event comes along, and there will be one at some point. From my time in the Marine Corps, I've come to understand the true meaning of sacrifice and honor and what it means to serve. I've also come to appreciate the importance of organizations like the Rotary Club, where service is at the heart of everything you do. The work you all do, whether it's supporting local schools, providing services to the communities, or offering aid in time of crisis, reflects the same spirit of service that inspires many to join the military. In sharing my story, I hope to emphasize that each of us has the power to make a difference, whether it's through military service, volunteer work, or simply being there for someone in need. Every act of service counts. And as we reflect on the events of September 11th, let us remember not just the tragedy of that day, but the resilience, courage, and unity that followed. Once again, thank you very much for having me, and I thank you for your time. Semper Fidelis. Okay, so now I'm going to go over a brief overview as to Blunt Island Command, what is taking place there and kind of what we do. So Marine Corps Support Facility and Blunt Island Command is the only Marine Corps base in the state of Florida. And as we know, here in Jacksonville is primarily a Navy town. So the Marine Corps, unfortunately, often goes unnoticed. Yeah, to the glee of some Navy and Army personnel in here, but unfortunately, often to the detriment of the Marine Corps. So the Marine Corps Support Facility Blunt Island has a strategic importance. It impacts national crisis and response capability. So the long story short of it is at Blunt Island, there is a lot of equipment. That equipment gets put onto ships that go off around the world, sits there in case of emergency, break glass in time of crisis. Those ships go to where needed. Marines fly in. All the equipment comes off to meet the Marine Corps so they can go fight. When it is not used, those ships come back here to Blunt Island to be offloaded and maintained. And it's a cyclical process. Congressional support, especially within the community, has been very important and invaluable to our command and allowing the Marine Corps to maintain what it does here at Blunt Island. Next slide. So Colonel Watson, our commanding officer, has the privilege and the unique responsibility of being both the base commander and the commanding officer of Blunt Island Command, the only active duty unit on the facility. So he answers to two bosses, two commanding generals, one at Marine Corps Logistics Command up in Albany, Georgia, and the other at MCI East, Marine Corps Installations East in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So it is a very unique situation here where one commanding officer is in charge of both of those aspects. And that does allow for a lot of unique chances for Colonel Watson to make decisions that affect the base and the community as a whole individually. And as you can see there in the bottom, the amount of personnel that we have on base is about mostly contractor workforce. And the total economic impact to the community is approximately $342 million annually. So here's an overview picture of the support facility. We have a slipway that is dredged to 38 feet deep, have 5 ship berths, a 40-ton crane, railhead, and maintenance facilities. So we are the only slipway that belongs to the Marine Corps. And I did learn that it is called a slipway and not a port, because if it was called a port, then by law, it needs to be under Army control. So that is why it is called a slipway. And the vessels that come into here are approximately only about 100 feet shorter than an aircraft carrier. So the naval vessels are very large. Next slide. And here's just a picture of one of those vessels being loaded with equipment. So that right there is roll on, roll off, where they drop a ramp and all of the vehicles can be loaded on and off of the vessels. But you can also see the crane back there, which has the unique name of Big Red. And so that they can also lift equipment on and off for lift on, lift off operations. This is a brief overview of the strategic positioning of the vessels and where the wide-reaching impact that Blunt Island Command has around the world. So you can see that we have operations that take place annually in Norway, in the Middle East, in Korea, in the Philippines, and also here at Jacksonville, Florida. So every year we are sending Marines abroad to those locations to train the warfighters overseas on how to properly utilize the naval ships that you see here at Blunt Island. Additionally, neighboring units come here to Jacksonville, Florida to train with our Marines and sailors on the base. Currently, there are 2 reduced operating ships here at Jacksonville, Florida. And unfortunately, I believe many of those will be going away in the future due to budget constraints. Next slide. So this is just some of the capabilities that the Marines have at Blunt Island Command. And you can see, I'm not going to go through and read all of what we do there, but all of those activities are generally contractor led. KBR is the main contractor that is there. They do the majority of the work, and the Marines and civilian employees oversee and ensure that the work is being done properly and according to all contracts and government and military specifications. So the equipment is maintained at a state of 95% readiness. And we often hear when we go overseas from all of the Marines and units that this is the best equipment that they've ever fallen in on. Anyone that has served in this room in the military knows oftentimes you get some equipment and it's in less than the desirable shape. Leaking, flat tires, things of that nature, rust, and the equipment that leaves here is in the best shape that it will ever be in its entire life cycle. So we take great pride in providing the warfighters overseas with the best possible equipment for them in their time of need. One big thing that we are doing here at Blunt Island is maritime experimentation. So thankfully, due to the slipway, as well as the proximity to Naval Station Mayport and the beachhead here, we are a prime location for testing and experimenting with new technologies. So we recently had a ship here, a new ship to shore experimentation here for about 4 months. We were the first and only place in the Marine Corps to get this vessel, and they tested it here and at Naval Station Mayport for about 4 months. So we are leading the way in the technology for new and future ship to shore movement for the Marine Corps. Next slide. Also on our base, we have the Navy Cargo Handling Battalion. It is a reserve unit made up of sailors, and they are responsible for providing and manning that lighterage that provides the ship to shore movement for the Marine Corps and the pre-positioning ships. So we work hand in hand with them when they're there for drills. They come in for their AT, and for real world events, these are the sailors that will take the vessels that are on the ship, offload them, set them up so that we can take our naval vessels and bring the vehicles and any other equipment ashore. Without this capability, we would have to dock those ships at a pier every time. Having this ability allows us to operate from half a mile, quarter mile offshore and move all that equipment onto land without actually having to touch ground. You can see here some of those ship to shore connectors that we have. The bottom one is the largest one. It's a roll-on, roll-off discharge facility. So that is pretty much a bridge. They would just lay out about 5, 6 of those, however many they need, to be able to reach from the ship all the way to shore so that all the vehicles can be moved off safely and efficiently without actually having to bring that vessel ashore, because many times we're going into locations where they do not have the ability to bring that vessel ashore. So having that ability is vital to the Marine Corps and the Navy warfighting team. And the ILNS that you see there is a very low draft that can go in as little as 4 feet of water. So the draft is very low, and that allows us to get in and out of places that normally we would obviously not be able to get in and out of with other types of vessels. And then these next 2 and last 2 slides are very important because, as I mentioned, as the Marine Corps and the U.S. government as a whole is pivoting more away from the Middle East, more towards the Pacific region. We are also losing some capabilities with that. So previously, we had 3 maritime prepositioning squadrons, 1 in the Mediterranean, 1 in the Indian Ocean, and then 1 in the South Pacific. And you can see it was 12 vessels that we currently had, and combined, those vessels could support a MEB of Marines. Approximately 12,000 Marines could be supported for up to 45 days with that equipment. And if you go to the next slide, this is where we're currently at. So you can see the decrease in 1 entire squadron in the Mediterranean that is now gone, and we are now down to 7 vessels. So we and with those 7 vessels, there are 2 more that you can see highlighted that are likely going away. So all of these capabilities and assets that I've mentioned so far are at risk to changing and altering how the Marine Corps Navy fights wars in the future, and ensuring that we have enough equipment that is readily available to support the war fighters. Now, if you go back to that one for 1 second, if you look there, we are not necessarily just getting rid of everything as a whole. We are moving generally to more of a shore-based system. So similar to Norway, where we have vehicles, ammunition, things in a cave in storage that can be brought out at a moment's notice. We are working towards doing similar building projects in the South Pacific. So we still have those assets. However, you would lose some flexibility with it being off of ships and now being land-based and being located solely in one fixed area, not having the flexibility to move as necessary to where the fight will be in the future. And that is a final picture of some of our vessels that are docked there in the slipway being worked on. And that is what I have for you. Do I have any questions?
Major, we want to thank you for coming in.
I got a couple of, I always got questions. All right. Thank you very much. In terms of the drills, can you paint a picture for us of what one of those drills might look like? I'm thinking you got a lot of equipment you got to move. You don't have a lot of time to do it. There's conditions that surround, right? Can you talk a little bit about
So one thing I can talk
how
about.
a drill gets done?
So one thing I can talk about is recently with the operations over in the Middle East, following the State of the Union, our president directed that we provide military support and aid to the Middle East. And within 3 days, we had ships that were not here, located elsewhere. They had come here, and within approximately 5 days after that, they had been loaded with gear, ready to go, and were set sail. So it is a lot of coordination that takes place. And that's why it's vital that the gear that is here located is maintained in that constant state of readiness, so that if that call comes, then we are able to load that equipment quickly, efficiently, and get it off to where it needs to go.
Is it always overseas, or do you have deployments here in the U.S. as well?
No, we recently had approximately 45 Marines from neighboring units that came here and did an operation and practiced doing all of that, loading on the vehicles, getting them onto the ship, do some maintenance on the ship, and then take them off.
All right, let's get some questions from the group. Judy, let's start with
Hold
you.
on just a minute. Let's get a microphone to Judy.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your service. Back to that pie chart that showed the contractors
Yes,
that
ma'am.
were here. I'm kind of curious, what are their skill sets, and where do they come from?
The majority of the skill set are maintainers. So people that have experience in mechanics, working on armored vehicles, the trucks, etc. The majority of them come from being former military. So there's a large portion of them that are retired military, have spent 20 to 25, 30 years in the military, have now retired, and then they make their way over to the contractor side with government oversight. But we also do have a large portion of them that do not have military experience, and they are just good with their hands. They know what they're doing around vehicles, but the large majority of them work and maintain on vehicles.
Are they hired locally or did they get brought in for
They're,
this?
they're all
Is it,
hired locally.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Ed Lumbar has a question or two.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little, excuse me, a little bit about Marine Recon. And do they work with the Green Beret and the Navy SEALs and all that good stuff?
Unfortunately, I don't really have much interaction and background with the Marine Recon. However, they are now part of SOCOM, which is Special Operations Command. So they would still work with and in close contact with all of the other Special Forces commands from the other services.
South Carolina, San Diego combination.
Combination, sir.
We have a question behind, but I also have a question for you, Major. I understand the weight of the tank is supported on the tracks. How often did you get stuck in that sand?
Quite frequently. A lot of it comes down to the skill of the driver and being able to know. The biggest issue would be if you steer the tank too quickly in loose sand, the sand will get in between the track and the road wheel. The track would fall off, and then you'd have to spend hour and a half getting it back on.
You talked about some of the equipment. Can you tell us what some of that equipment is that you're loading and offloading and unloading? Is it just support equipment, or is it actual combat gear?
So we have a variety of assets. The majority of them are wheeled vehicles. So 7-ton trucks, Humvees, JLTVs. We unfortunately, my MOS, as a tank officer, tanks are now gone from the Marine Corps. So we no longer have tanks. The last ones left about 1.5 years ago, came off of the ships that were out there. However, we do have some armament that's still going on there. M777 howitzers are coming back and will be going on the ships. We have amphibious assault vehicles on the ships, as well as we have a whole Navy medical branch that works here. It's about 9 sailors and 1 officer and 8 enlisted, and they work on ensuring that there are containers of medical supplies on the ships. There's weapons, ammunition, aviation support equipment, mobile runways that can be set up overseas. So it's a wide variety of everything that you would need to pretty much get into a country and start combat operations.
Another question from me. What is the possibility of ever going out there on a field trip type thing and getting a tour? Is that something we can set up with you?
Yes, you can. Actually, this week, I think we've had about 4 different tours and commands coming to visit. So it happens quite frequently. I would say in my time in the Marine Corps, this is the location that has gotten by far the most amount of visits. So we can definitely work something out.
Most of your people out there working are contract employees. But if you did total number of people that work out there on any given day, what would that total be?
I believe it's around 1,200.
Do you have base housing out there is my first question. And second, any stuff from the Oshkosh truck factory up in Oshkosh roam around up there?
We do have lots of Oshkosh equipment, specifically the JLTVs these days. And we do not have base housing. So Marine Corps Support Facility Blunt Island has little to no facilities of what you would think of as a normal base. We have some vending machines, and we have a little shopette that serves breakfast and lunch from about 06 to 1300. Outside of that, there is nothing else on the base other than industrial facilities. So all of our junior Marines and sailors are housed at Naval Station Mayport, which adds a whole nother level of complexity when they live 45 minutes away. They're 18, 19 years old, and they're trying to adapt to being in the Marine Corps, and they don't have necessarily that close support system that you would expect at a bigger base.
I think that ends all the questions that we had. Do want to remind everyone that the blood mobile is outside and we'll be waiting for us if there's anyone that wants to come in. And President Tim, we turn it back over to you.
There was one question nobody asked. I'm so surprised. So how do we get our hands on one of those surplus tanks? Huh? You got some tanks sitting around?
If I knew I would have one.
All right. Join me in thanking his service. We've got a token of our esteem, and we're grateful that you were here. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. All right, everybody. We're at the end of today's program, and I want to thank our greeters for today. I think Katie Quackenbush is still, there's Katie. Thank you, Katie, for your continued work. I think Josh was impersonating Michael Corrigan. Nobody was fooled. Where's Josh at? He had to go. All right. He was impersonating Michael. So we wanted to thank him for his service. We had a great group of people on today's program. Lee Davis, Carl, Raul, Joe Springer, the maestro, and we want to give a special thanks to Major Marshall Hand. And as always, we'd like to thank our banquets manager, Tiffany, and the service staff at Timaquana. Give everybody a big round of applause. All right, today the four-way test is going to be led by Brian London. Brian's in the rear. Please stand as we recite the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Is it fun? Absolutely. All right, everybody, let's get out there and make some magic this week. We are adjourned. Good job, sir. Well done. Thank you, man. It's getting to be more and more fun. Thank you.